Hello, artists. Today we're going to be exploring boundaries, which is the theme of our 3D art course. Before we can start anything, you need to choose one of the bags of materials for our building game. And you need to glue the worksheet into the very next blank space in your sketchbook. Please not a random space in the middle of the blank pages. The very next random space, get it glued in, and then we can move on. Okay, so with those materials that you chose in that bag, you're going to construct a sculpture that represents a boundary. It must be a physical representation of a boundary. It needs to be constructed with those non-traditional materials. You might have picked something very strange. It needs to demonstrate your skill and control in the use of your materials and tools, meaning you need to maintain control of all those objects. And it should be a stable 3D sculpture because you need it to hang around for a little bit in order to do some things with it. That means it should not fall down. Take the next couple minutes to build your sculpture that represents a boundary. Now, it's built. You do not want to knock it down now or as we continue on, because first you're going to make a sketch of your sculpture on your paper. I want you to try to draw realistically, which means 3D. So please don't flatten the three-dimensional objects that you are building with. Instead, try to draw their height, width, and depth, which would make them 3D. But it's a small space, so do your best. Here's my sketch. I had some various bottle caps, marker caps, different size caps. I arranged them into a ring, and here is the sketch of what that looked like on my desk in front of me. So what do you think a boundary is? A boundary is a noun. It's a line that marks the limits of an area or a dividing line. It can also be the limit of a subject or an activity. Look at all these similar words. They might help you figure out what that boundary means to you and how you can connect it to what you already know. And on your paper, please write a definition of the term boundaries. You can copy one or both of these. You can combine them into one definition. But on paper, you need your definition. So then what would be literal boundaries, do you think? Here are some picture examples that might help you get started with your thinking. So you see we have a brick wall, we have a door in a wall, we even have a jail cell. I want you to think of 3 examples of literal boundaries and write them down on your paper. Try not to write down things that are on this slide, but start thinking of other literal boundaries, things you can see and touch and feel that we have in our world. Whether it's a fence, a tape line on the floor, a border between countries. Think of those literal boundaries and add things on your actual paper. So then what are figurative boundaries, do you think? So here are some picture examples to help you with your thinking. We have things like rules, stop signs or signage, or even other people's judgment. What I want you to do is start thinking of figurative boundaries we face and write 3 examples on your paper. Try not to write the things that I just gave you, but think even deeper. So rules and expectations from your parents, your teachers, the other people around you. Social norms are great examples of figurative boundaries. While we don't say it out loud, it is unacceptable to stand up and dance on the table in the middle of class. We have personal space bubbles that keep us from getting too close to people. We have expectations we place on ourselves about what we should say and should do and how we should act. We have expectations placed on us by society based on how we look, our gender, all of those things. Those are figurative boundaries that provide a limit to what we do. Now make an analogy between your constructed boundary, that sculpture that's still present on your table, and a figurative boundary, the things we just talked about. An analogy is just a comparison. So you have a sentence frame. My sculpture is like a blank boundary because, and then tell me why. For example, my little ring of marker caps and bottle caps is like a personal space bubble, which is very important to me because it changes depending who you're around. So I am perfectly fine with my own children running up to me, hugging me, touching me. I am not fine with people that I do not know coming up and doing the same to me. That would be unacceptable. But so that personal space bubble can be flexible or change in different settings. Go ahead and write yours on your paper. Now, you're going to alter your constructed boundary. This is why you didn't knock it down, to represent the way that a boundary can change. So go ahead and see how you can reconfigure what you have. You should not completely rebuild it from scratch. Altered means there's some of the original and something different about it to show how those boundaries can change. And make a sketch. So we need to record it. You need to try to draw this realistically. So on your paper where it says altered sculpture sketch, go ahead and sketch in how your sculpture looks now that you have changed it. When you are done drawing, you may clean up your materials. So please put them back in the bag, seal the bag, and I will come and collect the bag from your table. Here's my example of what my altered boundary sketch looked like. So I have made an open space in that personal space bubble that I was thinking of. And the bubble allows in a few. There's a little tiny opening, but not a lot. All right, last question. What do you think? Why do boundaries change? On your paper now, complete the sentence starter. Boundaries can change because. So your space looks like this. I want you to think about why it is that we are flexible with either physical limits. So why would we move a fence? Why would we move a wall? Why would we move a border between countries? But even more importantly, how can those figurative boundaries change? How can our rules, our expectations, the way we operate within our society, why does that change over time? Does it have to do with your age? Does it have to do with what you look like? How can that make a difference and make those boundaries change? When all of that is complete, your video is complete and your worksheet is complete. It should still be glued into your book. Your object should have been cleaned up, and you have now finished your boundary introduction. Congratulations.